Tell us about then when you went on the Pro Tour. Maybe take us into some of your favorite moments and matches from the Pro Tour.
Well, it was a big adjustment from the, not a big adjustment, but it's certainly an adjustment at the level of competition on a consistent basis. I felt like while I developed quite a bit during my college years, there were things within within competition that I was able to get away with at the college level that I wasn't able to get away with at the professional level, and so made it an immediate adjustment, or understood that I had to make an immediate adjustment to be able to be successful at the Pro Tour. And candidly, I think if you had told me before my career started that I would have the results I would have had, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. Having gone through it, I feel like like any competitor, always could have felt like I could have done a little bit better. Some of my favorite moments, graduated from Stanford in June of '98. Played competitively that summer in some smaller events, challengers, futures, things like that. Had a moderate amount of success. Was able to play the U.S. Open that fall in September. Won my first round against a guy from Australia who's around 50 in the world, so I was excited about that. Second round, played at Sampras when he was number 1 in the world, in the midst of his 6 years in a row of finishing number 1 in the world. Played him on Stadium, or actually on Armstrong, and lost, but a tough match, 4 sets.
Wow.
10,000 people in the stands. Even though it was a loss, played really well. Didn't know any better than to just win a set from Sampras. So that was a really fun, a great experience, and sort of gave you even though you lost, fond memory, and gives you some confidence moving forward that maybe I got a shot at being out here for a little while. And then took that momentum to the Australian Open 3 months later, and qualified. So I had to win 3 matches through qualifying, whereas at the U.S. Open I had gotten a wild card into the main draw, which was a blessing. Won 3 matches to qualify, which is very competitive. Won my first round. Second round, I'm playing a guy who's 9 in the world. Got through that one, so a tremendous win there.
Who was that?
This is Greg Rosetsky, a guy from Great Britain.
We've heard of
So that was a good win at the time. And then, although that was a great experience, it also was probably one of my top 2 or 3 matches I'd like to have back in the third round of the Australian Open, playing a guy from Romania named Andre Pavel, very talented guy, beautiful one-hand backhand, and was up 2 sets to playing great tennis. Was up 2 sets to 1 and 5-2 in the fourth. So I had an opportunity to make the 4th round of the Slam. This is 9 months after having graduated college. Little did I know, 15 years later, that would have been my best opportunity to make round of 16 at a Slam. And needless to say, didn't get it done. Still haven't forgiven myself. Coach hasn't forgiven me.
Any other matches you wish you could have back? Is that their
How much
biggest
time?
one?
Remember, the losses a lot more than the wins. That was a big one. Later that summer, actually, 3rd round Wimbledon. Saved a match point in the 4th set in the 3rd round. Was up 4-1 in the 5th to play Sampras round of 16 on Stadium at Wimbledon. Didn't get that one done either.
Who was that?
Daniel Nestor, who is still playing,
Yeah.
one of the top 5 doubles players in the world. Could play a little bit of singles back in the day. Big serve, lefty, really tough to deal with on the grass. Saved the match point in the 4th. And couldn't close it out.
What do you see as, when you look at what's going on the tour now, what do you see as, is there anything different between now and when you were playing?
Yeah, when I was playing now was sadly 16 years ago, 15, 16 years ago. So I think there's been some changes in I'll start with the men's game. With the technology, particularly with the strings, it's a lot harder for players, I think, to come forward, finish points at the net because of the amount of rotation and the amount of power players are able to put on the ball. It's just very difficult to take those balls early, the way Coach used to teach Johnny Mack and Alex O'Brien to play the game back in the 80s and the 70s. Coach actually the 60s as well, I think. It's much more difficult to play that way today. The game is played much more sort of from here than it is straight ahead from here. And so getting that rotation on the ball, it makes for the game a little bit more one-dimensional. Guys hitting huge ground strokes from the back, as opposed to being able to come forward and have that contrast that we used to see with McEnroe and Borg. So that's a little bit disappointing. At the same time, I think that tennis players now are some of the best athletes in the world, and what Djokovic and Nadal did in the finals of the Australian, playing the 30-ball rallies 5.5 hours in, is just remarkable. So I think the big change is the physicality in the game. I mean, you can't be a top 100 player if you're not a monster athlete, and you can cover the court like nobody's business. So I think that's the commonality. That's the big change in the game. And really, what these top 4 guys are doing the last 2 years, Djokovic, Nadal, Roger, and Murray, it's incredible. I mean, there's such a distinction between 4 and 5, and what those guys have done the last 2 years, and how they've been. Now, Roger's been that consistent for how long now? 10 years. It's remarkable. But really, to see 4 guys doing that, I think is pretty incredible.
Yeah. So for the common fan, what do you think? What insight do you have into what it's like to be on a tour that we might not really know?
I think a lot of folks would say, look, it's a lot of travel. You're away from family and loved ones a lot. 35 weeks a year on the road. A lot of airplanes. But that's not to say. I've now been not playing on tour for 4.5 years and commuting to a job and sitting behind a desk, and it turns out playing tennis wasn't such a bad gig. But no doubt while you're doing it, it's certainly a grind, and keeping yourself healthy is important, not just physically but also mentally, and that can be challenging at times. Particularly when you're young and 20, 21 years old, and you think you know a lot, but really you don't know anything. So dealing with that, I think, is challenging.
So Paul, what are you doing now, and does what you learned in tennis apply at all?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, right now I work for a clean energy company, and I'm in a sales role. And when I was making the transition from playing competitively, I wanted to pursue a sales role just because I felt like in the professional world that competitiveness would sort of transcend a little bit. Tennis is very much a merit-based, performance-oriented, performance-based gig, more so than any other athletic endeavor, I think. I mean, maybe a little bit golf, because it's also individual, but I mean, every Monday in tennis, they put a number next to your name to let you know how you're doing relative to your peers. And you got no coaches. I mean, you got coaches, but no one to prevent you from playing. No coach who's taking away playing time. It's all on you. And so, sales seem to be a decent transition there. Also loving staying involved in the game now, helping some kids out a little bit before and after work, serving on some committees with USTA. So really enjoying my time staying involved in the game at this point.
So do you guys have any questions for Paul?
Paul, what's your thought about the future of American tennis? I was here a couple days ago watching the guys play, and I always like looking at the rosters. There's one American on the other roster.
Who are you watching? Is that Pacific?
Yeah. No, but just any of them. I mean, I had a scholarship my name at ASU tennis. Dick knows, and
And ASU doesn't have a program anymore.
And we don't have a program anymore.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's just like it's just.
Well, so there are two things, like future of American tennis, future of American tennis within the college game. It's sort of two different things. Start within the college game. I'd love to see, particularly the public institutions, I'd like to see the coaches at the public institutions put more of an emphasis on providing opportunities for American players. And, some of the private schools, I think, have a little bit more of a justification for not giving scholarships to Americans quite as much. I think it's a little disheartening for some American juniors coming up when they see a lot of the scholarships going to international players because it maybe, why am I going to work so hard and I'm not going to have a chance at a scholarship anyway. So that's a challenge. At the same time, the influx of international competition in college has increased the level of play, I think, to a large extent. At the detriment at times maybe of American tennis, but I also have the competitor in me that says, you know what, Americans just got to get it done, just get better. Right? There's no reason, even the coaches that got 6 foreigners on their team, if there's an American who's better than all of them, I promise you, they'll take them. So, I'm not going to make any excuses. I think American youth have a lot more distractions than perhaps we used to. With social media, the internet, different types of sports as well. The other thing about tennis, which is, I think, interesting, is especially when you're starting, it is a really humbling game. I don't care what kind of athlete you are, you pick up this racket for the first time, you are not going to be good. And you need to, it's a 10,000-hour sport. you need to put in 10,000 hours to play at an elite level. And if you're not willing to do it, if you pick it up, say, I'm not so good, and you pick up something else, or if you, whatever, get onto Facebook and you don't invest the time, tennis is not going to reward you. And whereas, you hear some stories of 6'9" big guy who didn't pick up football till he's 17, 18 years old and is playing in the NFL now. It's a big motor skill sport. Tennis is a small motor skill muscle memory sport. And if you don't start playing when you're younger, and if you don't put in 1,000, 10,000 hours, barring a little bit from Malcolm Gladwell there and outliers, but it's very, very true in tennis, more so than I think all the other sports. Golf probably the same way. So you got to invest the time, and with all the distractions going on, it's probably harder. It's the same. The same thing's true internationally, but maybe some of these, guys are hungrier from Eastern Europe and don't have quite as many options and invest a little bit more time, or willing to invest the time in the game.
Yeah, just follow up on that. I mean, you don't see a lot of Americans going to Europe and go to college and play tennis. They all come here.
Right. But there aren't really four-year institutions here. That's the thing about Europe is, in college you go to a liberal arts education at 18 years old, and then you go do your professional thing. In Europe, you're doing your professional thing at 18. You got Oxford and Cambridge, but you got two of them, four of them. In the United States, you got how many?
I was looking at the roster today. I admire Stanford actually has what Jordan went to here in the U.S. So that was very good. And that to me, if they're a public funded university, they should really consider American players first. Maybe the international players are rich. They're a country club. They don't need to be handed in a free scholarship to play Cal or here at Stanford, you know what I mean?
Who are rich?
I mean, the international players. They're
Not
rich.
all of them.
They're country club players. I mean, especially in golf. I mean, they can afford to pay for a Stanford or a Cal Berkeley, tuition rate. But I think the American, like these kids, they need to have aspiration. They can play collegiate tennis or golf.
So I agree with you that the more American youth see Americans playing in college tennis, the more aspirational it is for them, and the more they feel like they have that opportunity. I don't necessarily know enough to agree or disagree with your comment that international players who play college tennis are inherently rich. I don't know enough.
It's like
But I understand your point. And
yeah, it would have been nice to see a lot of American tennis players doing well, and I think that starts from high school,
it would be
college, and then into the pros.
And we got a great story right now. And John Isner spent 4 years in school. He played 4 years in school. I don't know if he graduated. He spent 4 years in school, and he's 9 in the world right now. And if I'm a college tennis coach, I'm bringing into every parent's living room. Say, look at John Isner. He can go to school and and have a successful career. And it's a phenomenal story. And we should be celebrating it.